Chapter 1521. Sail Maid. Min laughed as the conversation got completely sidetracked. They were not even thinking about the rings anymore, though the elder had put payment on the counter for one. She pushed the ring into his hand, and the elder's mind turned back to the task at hand.
Right.
The rings. Obviously, you can make more. How many can you make? We have thousands of warriors who need rings. Carl sighed. He knew that was coming. There were too many warriors everywhere. Even in the immortal worlds, it was all warriors all the time. What Carl didn't know was that it was so much worse here. Everyone focused on combat skills because travel was so dangerous. So, there were basically no options chosen by most of the population but melee combat classes and mages. Even clerics were a rare option, unless they were dragons of the pantheon races. I know that we're immortals, but it will take significant time to make thousands more rings of that type. It's not a copy and paste process, and I don't have the immortal rank raw materials to make many more of them. Carving isn't my specialty, so I often procure the base rings individually and then enhance them. Carl explained. Well, I'm sure that we can find some. We are a merchant clan. The New Home clan has portals, boats, and ground-based trade caravans constantly moving across the continent. If we can't find it, nobody can. Oh, if you have boats, does that mean that you have sea elves? I haven't seen any since I arrived, but I haven't had an opportunity to explore.
Carl asked.
Again with the protective gestures. No. The blue elves are better known to be pirates than legitimate merchants. I would advise staying away from them. Their affinity to their god is strong, and they tend to advance fast, so there are many ascendant immortals in their ranks. The elder warned. Got it. No flirting with the elf girls in exchange for loot. Got it. Definitely finding elf girls to loot. Kara confirmed in his mind. How is Remy doing? She's dancing and singing, but she's all finished her advancement. Well, it made sense that she would want to celebrate before she came home. But Carl had misunderstood. Remy's advancement had come with an evolution. She had gone from Naga Queen to Naga Matriarch, an innately immortal ranked monster species. But the advancement had reset her growth in line with her power level relative to her new species, and she was a tiny spirit snake again, until she transformed. Even in Naga form, she was less than a meter long, just a hatchling of a matriarch, and for the first time, she was considering actually using a humanoid transformation, just so she could reach her cauldron to do alchemy. Fortunately, she could fly, so she could at least see into it, even if it was awkward to move ingredients without using wind magic. Ask the immortals about making pills instead of potions. They're smaller, easier to handle. No need for a larger body just to hold your work. Thor suggested. That was also a pretty good option. She would have to bother Elder Socrate once she returned. There were bound to be things that he could teach her about alchemy. She would be very disappointed if the Alchemy Hall Elder wasn't a master alchemist and was just some glorified caretaker. Just thinking about it was getting her excited, so Remy immediately returned to Carl's side, as he should be at the Alchemy Hall. Why is this place not for alchemy? Missed my target? Carl, deliver me to my destination. I need knowledge. The immortal stopped to stare at the meter-long blue spirit snake. Is that a Naga matriarch? The elder asked. Her name is Remy, and she is quite obsessed with alchemy. I was supposed to be back at work by now. Carl agreed. The elder sighed.
Fine.
I will take one ring. They can argue over the other. Come, I will bring you to Elder Socrate, so he doesn't send me rude messages about delaying his worker. Socrate wouldn't be the only one upset. Mona was on duty again today, and Carl had left her hanging during the afternoon rush. The blonde woman was about to give him a piece of her mind, until she saw that he was not alone. Trade Elder Malcolm, welcome. Did you find our wayward worker? The elder smiled at her. Miss Mona, good afternoon. I actually required a bit of his time and caused him to return late. Please inform Elder Socrate that his time can be credited under my supervision. Mona nodded. I take it that others found out that he can craft items? You already knew? He made a spear for his wife yesterday while we were slow. It's quite the work of art. Even Elder Fersham was impressed. Malcolm sighed. And nobody thought to tell me? The elder in charge of our sea trade routes? Mona shrugged. I'm not privy to those decisions. Carl moved behind the counter and took an order while the two gossiped, and the members in line listened quietly. Then, the elder noticed that he was feeding the bunnies when they brought the orders. We should put a warning on his profile, I think. The green dragon at the counter covered for him as well. She didn't even mention that he was the craftsman of the ring I was looking to purchase until I read the description and found that he was standing in the room with us. Mona gave Carl a look that said, "Really?" and he shrugged. The drama was too good, I couldn't leave so fast, and then I got caught up in the argument over the good loot. Remy bopped her tail against Carl's neck, reminding him that she was still there, and startled the men in line. "Sir, are you aware that there is a venomous snake on your shoulder?" "Her name is Remy. She is an alchemist, it's fine." Elder Socrate, who had been watching the drama in the warehouse from the alchemy hall's monitors, came down to investigate this claim of a Naga alchemist. That could make his day interesting. Chapter 1522. Remy meets Socrate. Remy floated off Carl's shoulder to sit on the counter and transform back to her diminished Naga form, still no more than a meter long, and extremely slender compared to a human her weight. "Elder Socrate, the Carl says that you know alchemy. I need recipes. I have stuff and recipes to trade. Do you want to know how to fix your hairline? I have a very good hair growth cream. It works instantly, even if the hair loss is extreme." The elder laughed. "At my age, this level of hair loss is dignified. I will have you know. I have quite gotten used to it, but perhaps just a little bit to thicken the beard." Remy slithered up his arm, while the customer at the counter recoiled in horror. He was definitely not a snake person. Not at all. Leave that nonsense to the monster man and the elders. Remy and Elder Socrate chatted silently in rapid technical jargon about alchemy, and then the tiny Naga took out a blue flower, and the elder got extremely excited before leaving the room with her still wrapped around his arm. "Well, that settles that. Remy has made a new friend. Who is next? I will help you here, and sorry for the delay." The line at the alchemy hall began to move again, and Hawk left a space to sit in the rafters and watch the festivities. This place was lively, and there were so many fire users that it was hard not to like them. Even the weird systems liked to use energy explosions, and those were almost fire. Certainly, they were not water. One by one, the customers moved through the line, each of them wondering what sort of crazy changes were going on in the alchemy hall this week. They had a convict working off his time at the counter, which was uncommon enough if he wasn't an alchemist to begin with. But now they had a dark flame phoenix in the rafters, and rumors were that the hall master was locked in his room with a Naga matriarch. Seeing one monster in the clan compound was strange enough, but lately they were everywhere and either tame or somewhat domesticated. Tame was not the word to use for a chaos badger. Even domesticated was questionable. Kara had returned when Remy did, only a few minutes later, so that she could pack up the children and the picnic before returning to their afternoon class with Ameldor, which was the highlight of her day's plans. They definitely couldn't miss combat training, even if they were in trouble for ditching half the day's classes. Maybe they could call it an educational field trip? One look at Amador's face said that they would not be getting away with any simple excuses. He had gathered most of the children's parents and two of the other elders at the door to his class, waiting for them to return. Care to explain? There was a tribulation and we had to go watch it. The chance to get a first-hand view of tribulation lightning doesn't come every day, and it's important that they fully understand the phenomenon so that they have a better comprehend of the nature of immortal energy. Kara replied confidently. "Is that the story you're going with? Does the story need more details?" The Wrath Demon smiled, while the parents continued to glare at Kara, who they thought was just a troublemaker of a student. Immortal ranked beastkin children weren't completely unheard of, so while they looked down on her as a bad influence, she had also reached immortality before adulthood, and that was up to the standards of the best of the immortals. Most of the purely human children in the immortal worlds were not born as true immortals. They gained the immortality as they matured, and simply enjoyed a higher status for having been born in the immortal realm and coming from immortal parents, with the ability to reach immortality naturally. One of the parents glared at Kara, who walked right up to her legs, forcing the irate mother to look directly down at her. Taking advantage of the blind spot under the woman's rather ample midriff, Kara pilfered the contents of her pockets, only to find that she wasn't carrying anything but makeup. Perhaps the Dana mage would like it? Kara hugged the angry woman. I'm sorry we made you worry. I swear, it was perfectly safe. We even had a peak immortal watching over us at the destination, and I kept the portal open the whole time, in case there was danger. Anywhere that it was safe to do an advancement to the immortal rank would naturally have peak immortals watching over it, perhaps even one of the supremes who guarded this world. But that did not mean it was safe. Those men, and it was almost always men, were recruiters for their factions, clans, and organizations. They were watching that place in order to recruit a new immortal who didn't have a private safe spot to do their advancement. So, in a way, the safe areas for tribulation were actually the most dangerous, as the new immortal had to navigate their way through the advancement without offending any of the groups, but while still picking one for safety. How Kara had known one was happening today, and where it would be, she did not know. But she did know that it was
Not safe.
Who are your parents? We need to speak with them about this sort of behavior, young lady. The angry mother demanded. Kara smiled, and Ameldor resisted the urge to laugh. The woman hadn't realized that Kara was a Chaos Badger yet, and thought that she was just one of the students. Oh, that would be Mr. Carl and the Dana Mage. They are my legal guardians. You can discuss it with them if you think that my actions were out of order. But I assure you, it was perfectly safe, and look how happy everyone is to have learned some new things, while still getting back in time for combat class. Where do I find this Carl person? He should be doing his punishment detail at the Alchemy Hall today. You know, for killing those people and blowing up a clothing shop. Chapter 15:23. Karen Unleashed. Before she could question the last bit of Kara's answer, the woman was storming out the door, dragging the laughing badger by her overalls. Behind them were all the other parents, who had realized that the badger was actually more powerful than she was, a procession of curious students, as well as Ameldor, who expected to need to serve as referee for a challenge. Just a few words would have alerted the irate woman that she was making some sort of terrible mistake, going to confront someone on the word of a Chaos Badger who may, or may not even know the person in question. However, it was so much more entertaining to just let her do it. They had already accepted that the outing was properly supervised, as the badger only looked like a child, and wasn't actually a student of the school. Therefore, whoever she was leading this woman to had to be incredibly entertaining to have overcome the badger's urge to just continually troll the woman herself. Carl braced for a furious mother's arrival as he finished delivering orders for the people in line at the Alchemy Hall. Her fury arrived before she did, her aura pounding at full intensity and all the hate made possible by a helicopter parent scorned. Even the elder came out to see what had made her so upset. Good afternoon. What can I get for you? I am new, but I can process returns if you need.
Yes.
Your child abducted mine. Took her to an entirely different city on an outing without a permission slip, parental approval, or a PDA commission study. The woman shouted, holding Kara in front of her. I'm sorry, only goods purchased here can be returned to the Alchemy Hall. We cannot process a refund for this lovely badger. Do you think that you are funny? Is that it? I will have you know that there are regulations, rules, and standards that simply must be abided by. They are non-optional. Carl frowned. They seem pretty optional to me if even your child freely ignores them to go on a picnic. The woman was actually spluttering in rage, unable to get a word out. She had released Kara, who was now in badger form, sitting on Ameldor's shoulder to watch the show, as if it had nothing to do with her. Do you not take me seriously? I will murder you, you piece of PDA, disrespecting trash. Kara giggled, as she just invoked the Parents' Association as a supreme authority. Ameldor chuckled. She thinks that it is. She's the president. Power glowed on the woman's hands, and Carl activated brutality, along with unobtrusive behemoth, so that his size didn't skyrocket. This time, Carl waited for her skill to actually leave her hand before he struck with nothing but pure mana, imbued with the fundamental rule of mana manipulation. Her skill shattered, and the angry mother went flying out of the door. Very sorry, but there is no fighting in the Alchemy Hall. We have many sensitive goods here. If you wish to fight, please wait patiently for an opponent outside. Elder Socrate chuckled quietly at the professional tone that Carl used, while everyone else tried to understand how he had just knocked her out the door. If you couldn't use the fundamental rule of mana manipulation or stealth, you were fairly limited on physical skills or rules that activated invisible strikes. Wind-based rules were the most common of the category, but they hadn't felt any air displacement. The woman dusted herself off. I have challenged, and you have responded with force. You have no right to turn down the duel. Meet me in the arena in 5 minutes. She declared smugly. Carl turned to the elder. Sorry, I will need to take a short break. 15 minutes at most. You think that 15 minutes will be enough to take down the PDA? One of the other parents asked. It's just one person. How long do duels usually last? The man laughed. Oh, it's not just one woman. Once you challenge her, you challenge the entire group, and they will come at you one after another until you are thoroughly defeated, or they run out of members. How hard do you think that I have to hit her to dissuade them? As gently as possible, so you don't actually make an enemy of all the parents of the children who went on an outing with Kara.
Damn.
Elder Socrate laughed. You were thinking something more extreme than just vaporizing her body, weren't you? I mean, I do know, Soul Siphon. Elder Socrate made a frantic waving gesture. That one is most definitely banned in the arena. It shouldn't activate, but if it does, we'll both be in trouble. Right, the elder was responsible for Carl's good behavior. Fortunately, that didn't extend to Kara. The group followed Carl to the arena, while he came up with a plan. How was he going to defeat that woman without pummeling her into oblivion? I have ideas. Opal suggested. If you use an illusionary domain and reality warp, with chaotic zone and mana suppression, you can force her to battle her worst nightmares without the ability to use skills. And what might those be? Start out easy, dropping off the kids at school, but she's actually naked or in her nightgown. Then a letter from the principal that her child has been expelled for drug use. Finish it up with a Ray special, things that go bump in the dark, and you can get a victory by complete mind break. That's evil. I like it. I wonder if there is a way that we can make it harder for her to adapt to pacifism and dominating power. I'm willing to wager that her mental strength isn't higher than yours is. Dominating power should put her in full hypnosis, then just a bit of intimidation or oppression should get her in the dream state you want. Don't forget to apply the mana manipulation rule to make a barrier over everything, in case she overcomes mana suppression. Kara added, Wait for me. I'm coming back with the Dana Mage. This is too good to miss. Ray mentally shouted. Chapter 1524, A Living Nightmare. The irate mother was waiting in the arena when Carl arrived. Are you ready to admit defeat? Kneel before me and serve the PDA for 100 years, and I may forgive you. She demanded. Did you read that line in a novel? It was a smutty novel, wasn't it? A genuine bodice ripper, sort of spicy evening read.
Carl joked.
Elder Socrate flew up to the referee's stand with Remy wrapped around his neck like a necklace and called down to them. If the contestants are done trash-talking, we'll get this started. Of course, Elder. I would hate to waste your time. The elder nodded, and the woman drew her sword. Then Carl blocked off all energy in the area using mana suppression before hitting her with overwhelming presence, dominating power, and pacifism. Her eyes glazed over, and the sword dropped to the ground as her knees buckled. Then Carl started the illusion. Suddenly, she found her child tugging at her sleeve, urging her for a kiss before school. Only, she was wearing a hideous pink formless nightgown, and her body was incredibly obese. Gone were her decades of devotion at the gym. She was back to her peak post-pregnancy weight, over 50 kilos heavier than she was now. Mommy, don't worry, I'm not embarrassed. You work so hard to get me to school on time. Here, I will help you to your feet. I know how hard it is for you to walk. The woman shrieked in terror as she stood, and the illusionary boy cried as she pushed him away. It's not real. It's not real. She stammered. Mommy? Why did you push me? Carl teleported into her line of sight, disguised as Ameldor. There you are. The headmaster would like to have a word with you. He believes that you might have been slacking on your duties as a mother, as your son is failing his classes. He would like to speak to you about reassigning the chairmanship of the PDA while you take a few years away from stressful duties to focus on your health.
No, no.
This isn't real. I am the head. Nobody else could take my place. How dare he try to fire me? She waved her hand ineffectually, and Carl created a layer of gravel over the sword she had dropped, hiding it from sight before she realized this was an illusion. Please, there is no need for a public spectacle. We can handle this privately. The immortals in the stands watched in horror as a respected member of the parental community had a full-blown mental breakdown, slapping at the fake wrath demon after she failed to activate any of her skills. Sleep, and you will feel better in the morning. Carl put a heavy dose of mental domination behind the command, and her eyes closed. In that instant, he changed the setting to a generic bedroom that he hoped was like hers, and made the illusion nearly pitch black. Copying Ray's new skill, Undead Minions, he called forth a group of zombies to scratch at the windows. They were making a racket like they were trying to break in as the woman stumbled about in the dark, unable to see without a skill. The window broke, and she screamed, then tried to run for her child's room. Only, Carl hadn't made more rooms. The door was just a prop on the wall-shaped barrier that she struggled frantically with. For extra effect, Carl added the screaming of a child, zombies in the hallways, and then terrified pleading. Then, he had zombies attempt to climb in her broken window. She smashed at them with a lamp, not even thinking to use items from her inventory as Ray assisted Carl by directed the show, adding increasingly horrifying images, until she finally had Carl call spectral knights with undead army to bang at the walls, while the voice of the child screamed in agony and pleaded for his life. That was too much. The woman promptly passed out, soiled herself, and began rocking in the fetal position. Carl used Disintegrate on the mess to preserve a bit of dignity for her as he looked up at Elder Socrate. How the hell should I know? Normally, they hit each other. The Elder muttered, just loud enough for the crowd to hear. The challenger is unable to continue. This challenge is over. He announced in a louder tone. Carl let the illusion fade, but the woman didn't get up, just cried and rocked. Winning. Ray cheered. She had been waiting a very long time to do that. The other ladies of the PDA rushed in with the challenger's actual child to try to console her, but she just shrieked. Zombie, they turned my child into a zombie. My poor baby. Mommy is with you. We can both go together. Stop her. Elder Socrate shouted as she called her blade to her hand and prepared a skill. Carl hit her with mana suppression and put an eternal lightning barrier over the child as the other women panicked. Someone get her to the healers. She needs treatment fast. And for the love of all the gods, don't let her have any weapons. Elder Socrate demanded. Ray hopped into the arena, laughing. Well, that went wonderfully. I think that my idea for the scary things in the dark worked wonderfully. One of the PDA members turned to her. This was your idea? Do you have any idea what you've done? Ray nodded eagerly. I am quite sure that our idea broke her without even laying a hand on her. If you would like, I can make a proposal to introduce it as an anti-bullying measure in the schools. I call it non-corporal discipline. I think that it will be the next big thing in mental fortitude training. Kara howled with laughter, while Ameldor shook his head in dismay. That was not at all how I thought that fight was going to go. I was certain that Carl was going to get publicly shamed for beating a woman with no notable combat skills. But this was something entirely different. To think, her biggest fears were getting fat and seeing zombies. The Wrath Demon had completely missed the nuance, Kara realized. I think that it was the fat part that got to her. If she gives you trouble in the future, just ask her if she's put on a few kilos, then tell her you like her new outfit to soften the blow. Chapter 1525. PDA in defeat. Elder Socrate turned to Carl now that the women of the PDA were out of the arena. You might as well return to work, unless you're planning a victory dinner or something. I have a very long meeting with the other elders about what should and should not be allowed in a duel. Mental skills are rare and permitted, but that combination of immortal rank illusions and mental skills is just nasty. They might request that you just slap her, or something next time there is trouble for your little one at the school. Kara and Ameldor laughed. It was the woman's fault that she thought Kara was a real student and not just a young immortal taking remedial classes to cover things that she had never learned before. But there was also a good chance that she was going to get in trouble with the parents again. Carl laughed as he returned to the alchemy hall with Ray and Dana, while Kara remained in a reduced-size badger form to ride on Ameldor's shoulder back to the school. The PDA moms are too dumb to connect the two. They won't even realize that it's me, she gloated. Elder Socrate sighed as he saw the smug look on the badger's scarred face. The clan is about to get a lot more interesting, I feel. With that badger wandering around, there is no way that we're about to have calm days. Dana smiled. Oh, I wouldn't worry too much about her. That's background chaos. Just wait until everyone starts showing up at the alchemy hall for equipment instead of the warehouse, just because Carl is on punishment duty. The elder looked horrified. That's right. Fighting while on punishment duty is an automatic extension. No, I can argue that he didn't actually fight, there was no hitting. Yes, that will work. He was idly rubbing Remy's hooded head as the Naga matriarch hung around his neck, preparing herbs in her tiny hands. Remy had most definitely made a new friend, and it was only a matter of time before she dragged him back to her lab so that they could work on a new experiment together using familiar equipment. Though, that might have to wait until she had learned whatever new techniques were common in the immortal worlds. There was a lot that Remy didn't know about immortal rank alchemy, and she had found the perfect person to teach her. As soon as they got back to the alchemy hall, where dozens of immortals were lingering, not in line, but waiting for Carl to return, Dana knew that her warning about the alchemy hall's customer base was already too late. There was no time to prepare if the lineup was already present. He's back. Everyone get in order. Someone called, and Dana sighed. You know what? I will be at the apartment with Ray. Carl nodded. I will come back later to help with the upgrades. It appears that I have garnered a fandom. The people in line all laughed. In a way, Carl was right. Most of them wanted to place orders for equipment. First up, who is here for something from the alchemy warehouse? If you have an order, please come to the front of the line. Carl called. Nobody moved. Seriously? All right, start with your proposals. I'm sure that the fine ladies of the alchemy hall will appreciate me not causing trouble for their regular customers. One of the more powerful immortals held up his hand to stop the flood of questions before they started. He was ascendant in power, though not wearing the robes of an elder, and it seemed to earn him enough respect that nobody questioned him. First off, who is the tiny snake? Is she a friend of yours? Or did the elder find her somewhere? She is my bonded partner. Her specialty is alchemy, and she seems to be taken with the elder. Anyone who is willing to talk about alchemy for days on end is an instant friend to Remy. Carl explained. The man nodded. I thought that might be the case. I'm sure that someone will challenge her eventually to see where she ranks. But she's so small that it might be a while before anyone realizes that she's not a small child. Carl laughed. She really is a child. She never made it to adulthood before she evolved into a matriarch and her body size reset. If that's the case, I will post that she's off limits until grown. Only adults are on the Spirit Immortal ranking charts. Carl chuckled. Technically, Kara isn't fully grown yet either. But she doesn't mind if people challenge her. She has a social experiment ongoing, and she needs data. The immortal looked confused. What sort of social experiment could a Chaos Badger possibly be running? She's trying to taste test every species at every rank to form a comparative chart of taste versus power level. How is that going? She got her face scarred while taste testing a demigod, but other than that, it's been going very well. The customers all chuckled at the thought of the badger actually licking a demigod. They could definitely see it happening. Now, back on topic. It has come to our attention that you are a skilled tradesman. You are likely aware that the new Home Merchant Clan is not primarily a crafting organization. We are also not primarily a combat clan, though we train all sorts of guards and others who work for the merchants. So we tend to be more than a little short on gear when we head out into the world. There are multiple trial grounds nearby and some dungeon instances. However, we often get outcompeted for them by the groups from Kondim or the Almixii sect. They're a purely combat-focused group, and despite the name, they're not systemless sorts. They all use the local system classes and only recruit advanced combat classes with high potential. You would think that limits them, but they've got over 20,000 immortals among their acolytes. For that reason, we are hoping that you can at least produce weapons for the clan. If we're going to challenge them for access, or fight them off once we're inside a shared secret space or trial ground, we need better equipment to make up for our lack of combat focus. Carl nodded. I understand the issue. However, I am a new immortal. I simply don't have the capacity, either in skill or finances, to turn out a huge number of weapons for the clan. If I could mass-produce gear, I'm sure that Elder Malcolm would be my new best friend. The visitors laughed at the thought of Malcolm's excited expression if someone told him that they could send out whole ships full of crafted gear at wholesale prices. The man loved profit more than his own wife. That was why he was twice divorced. Chapter 1526. Trickle-Fed Supply. Carl cleared his throat. However, I suppose that I can slowly make some weapons for those who are leading teams. Is that how it works? I was told the basics by Jeff, the Divine Lightning Dragon, that everyone usually goes out in groups with a few strong immortals and an assortment of weaker ones, so that they can reach all areas of the trials. The spokesman nodded. That's right. The elder or group leader fights the challenge to see who will go in first. All the opportunities are time and visitor limited. So if you lose and have to go last, you've almost definitely missed out entirely. And we are a common target for the challenges, as we have so many newbies.
New Home describes our people well.
Only the elders and a few others have been immortals for more than 100 years. The rest of the clan is young and newly arrived, not generational legacy immortals from this world. Great, they were the transfer students of the world. Is there a generic template that I can use, a bonus set that most will like? Or is it too individual?
Carl asked.
Honestly, immortals usually fight without crutches like a full set of gear. There simply isn't enough of it to go around. It's too easy to break, and nobody focuses on crafting to progress their path. The forging-related and alchemical paths to supremacy are simply too difficult to fund and understand for most. So, if it's better than this, it's better than most of the other clans' fighters will have. He placed an uncommon grade sword on the counter, and Carl resisted the urge to roll his eyes. This was the sort of thing that he sold for trash at mythic rank. How bad could the drop rates be in this world? They said that there were dungeons and hidden trial grounds here. They should be getting 1 or 2 items better than this every time they visited. Even if there were challengers, they should be able to distribute better gear. But that led him to an even more important question. If this was what they were using, what sort of trash were they selling? This was a merchant clan. They needed to have some sort of trade goods. Alright, I'm sure that I can work out something, but it takes time to source materials and have a proper weapon made. I can only upgrade a weapon that isn't already a system-linked magical weapon, and I'm not a weaponsmith. So, if you want them, there will be a delay while I obtain them and upgrade the weapons to my standards. However, I do have a few of my own connections. I can produce at least one weapon significantly better than that one every week. Carl explained. The men in the room sighed. So, if we all placed a request now, it could be half a year before we all got them? Carl shrugged. Give or take. Now, if you can find me weapons that are already made of immortal ring materials, at an exceptional skill level, I can turn them into rare-grade magical weapons much more quickly. Perhaps even 3 or 4 a week. Why should he do all the hard work when there was a whole clan available? I think that we can find what you need. There are many bladesmiths in this world who specialize in making weapons that bond to their wielders. Ones that do not need to be upgraded as the wielder grows. They're considered to be much more valuable than a standard weapon, as the material allows them to grow from their base form. However, they are not system-linked magical weapons. Carl shrugged. I've never seen one, but if you are right, then I should be able to improve them, and they will still scale with level, thanks to their materials. In fact, I will accept them as payment for the upgrade as well. Bring the one that you want upgraded, and another for the improvement fee. That's a steep price. I will offer you one to upgrade too. Carl nodded. Understandable. I agree. Find me the weapons, and I will do the work. The immortal made a grand gesture, and 3 swords appeared on the counter. A short and long sword in the same straight-bladed single-sided style, and a broad-bladed cutlass. I am assuming that you want these 2 upgraded? I can see that they are magical due to their materials, but not linked to the system. There shouldn't be any issues with the process. Carl agreed. How soon can you have it to me? There are 4 days before my next event. I need weapons for it.
Carl thought about it.
I have a bit of time to finish all my punishment. If it's slow here, I will take the night off and finish the blades for you by tomorrow evening. The immortal sighed in relief, while everyone else stared at the ostentatious show of wealth that he had just dropped on the counter. He had that sort of loot on him all this time and wasn't even using it? If it were them, they would have bonded the weapons immediately and started trying to level up their power. They certainly wouldn't have had them just lying around waiting for some super rare skill to come along and find a way to make them even better. Carl picked up the cutlass first and examined the materials, while admiring the huge flat surface it had to write on. This was even better than a spear. If he wanted to add bonuses to this, there would be no issues at all. Alright, what sort of bonuses would you like? I hear that some classes can't use 2 weapons with the same bonuses. So, let me know if you have restrictions or particular needs. I can work with what you need and come up with a specialized custom order. The onlookers sighed at the extravagance. But for the price, it was only reasonable that it would be made to order at least as much as the artisan could. I am a ninja by class. Do you have the ability to add something like Shadow Ambush to the blades, something that will allow me to launch an attack without the energy activation immediately before the attack giving me away? He asked. Oh, I think that I can come up with something for ambushes. And it will help you for the rest of the fight as well. Chapter 1527. What skill is right? Carl's idea was to make a fresh new skill for him, but one that both Dana and Ray would appreciate once he was finished with it. If he combined Shadow Step or Teleport with Invisibility or Ghost Beast, he should get an ambush skill that allowed instant movement either while remaining unseen or with the ability to move through walls. All of the options were good ones, so Carl started to mentally formulate the spell while he put the weapons away, and the others in the room started to plan how they were going to obtain more of the weapons to bribe Carl with. Immortal craftsmen had very little motivation to make things for others, most of the time. If they were truly poor, they would sell things that they made, but that was usually at a market or to the hall. They rarely took custom orders unless they wanted something very specific in return. In Carl's case, they knew what he wanted: weapons that grew with their wielder. The crowd began to disperse, so Carl kept working on the new skill, while sketching plans for the basic runes to go on the weapons. The customer was a ninja, so he was a fast-moving stealth rogue-type class. Bonuses to stealth and agility seemed more important than standard damage bonuses, but Carl decided to add one more item, just make them spicy. Ambush damage to targets. It would give the first strike a huge burst of damage, even if it didn't matter for the rest of the battle. Ray nodded in appreciation. Ambush damage was excellent, but she thought that instead of a new skill, Carl should give the weapon Devastate. Devastate, strikes dealing more than 10% of the target's health do double damage. With that and ambush damage, that first strike would rapidly turn into an instant kill skill. She could just have Carl add the new skills to weapons for her to use in humanoid form. No need to give them to strangers. Carl edited the runes for the weapons. If he put Devastate on one weapon and Shatter on the other to cause bonus damage on hit, then linked the two, the bonuses would resonate, and in theory, you should get an extra bonus for using both at once. The alchemy shop workers silently stared at the runes Carl was scribbling all over the page, wondering what language it was in. Then, he took out the 2 blades and began drawing on them with a paint pen, the sort that blacksmiths use to outline cuts. That seemed strange, and the paint shimmered in the light as Carl drew all over the weapons. Seemingly satisfied, he put the weapons away 3 hours later. He didn't want to finish them in front of others, but he could tell that the final effect should be just what he wanted. A resonant set of blades to be used as a pair. Just after dark, the others left, and Carl was alone with just the bunnies in the building, so he took the blades back out and used Ghost Fire to etch the runes into the blade. The paint wouldn't be enough at immortal rank, they had to be permanent to take the right effect. A final flow of mana caused the lights in the alchemy hall to flicker, and Carl learned that room-crafting evolving weapons of this grade was far more mana-intensive than even mythic weapons had been. Weapons created. The Spider's Greeting, Epic Grade 2 Weapon Set. Pieces 2 halves. Base damage scales with affinity to bonded user. When both are equipped, All attacks that do over 10% of a target's health deal double damage. All strikes cause 50% additional damage as internal damage against living targets. Increases agility by 450. Increases stealth by 10%. Elder Socrate came out with Remy wrapped around his arm and stared at the weapons on the counter. That is impressive, and it only took you half a day to make the two of them. Carl nodded. I will give them to him tomorrow evening, or the morning after. The alchemist elder chuckled. Tactical. I like it. Your friend the Naga has been a most wonderful lab assistant. She has proven incredibly adept at turning potion recipes into pill form for easy transport and longer storage times. Her runic alchemy technique is remarkably adaptable. I must say, it was like she was born to work in the immortal worlds. Her skills simply can't show themselves in the mortal realms. Carl smiled. I'm just glad that she made a friend. Socrate chuckled. Remy has made many new friends. She even got herself some specialized immortal rank equipment to make new recipes in exchange for her specialty products. That hair regrowth cream is a huge hit, and it even works on immortals. You have no idea how much of a shock that was. Very few things will actually work to change an immortal's body from what it has settled upon. However, there is a hint of the fundamental rules in that cream, and it works perfectly to convince even immortal bodies to regrow the hair that they once had. I had expected her to go for something grand and flashy, but going for the most practical possible option makes sense as well. Just imagine how handsome our elders are going to be compared to everyone else's. The next time that they go out on a mission, they will be the envy of every other clan.
Carl joked.
I'm certain that they are already planning their victory speeches. Remy slid down the elder's arm to stand on the table in front of Carl. It's not all that we did. I made a whole new type of healing pill with runes, and it's amazing. Do you know how hard it can be to get people to drink a potion when they're unconscious, or their throat is cut? But the pill I can just stick in any orifice, and it will dissolve. Elder Socrate chuckled. We tested that, by the way.
Don't ask.
But it was effective. Chapter 1528. Perfect timing. A customer came in, and Carl waved him forward before realizing that it was the man who had commissioned the blades. Blades that were currently sitting on the counter. Well, this is awkward. I was going to make you wait a day for dramatic effect, but I got them finished just a few minutes ago. Carl greeted him. Half a day? That is impressive, even if you devoted every minute to improving them. They're set now? That is an interesting technique. However, the stats on them are crazy. Even if you tried for 2 separate weapons, this would be beyond what most epic weapons could achieve. That looks like the Devastate epic grade skill on them as well. With that and Backstab, which grants me bonuses to the first strike, I think that this should be just what I needed. The internal damage is also challenging to heal, as many will not realize they have taken it until they try to move. It doesn't leave an external wound, and the strike just needs to land to apply it. It's one of the few effects that can reliably bypass most basic barriers. However, it doesn't do anything if your strike is parried, and it doesn't bypass damage reduction.
Carl explained.
So, it will damage through an energy barrier? Carl nodded.
Most types of them, yes.
You can test it if you would like. I will refund you if it isn't satisfactory. Elder Socrate laughed. Even without that, it's already worth the price paid. Agility and strength on a scaling weapon with Devastate? That's pushing the limits of luck to get from a standard drop. True, and they're exactly the weapon style that I wanted, so I really can't complain. Now, I just need to bond with them, and the base damage should begin to increase. I will return to my rooms and see you all in a few days, when I come to stock for the next outing. The moment that the man left, another ascended rank elder of the clan came in with a suspiciously bright smile on his face. Craftsman Carl. Good evening. Carl nodded politely.
Elder.
I suspect that you are not here for alchemical reagents. Indeed. I also have a pair of weapons and a most curious chest plate made of the same materials. It isn't well suited to my frame, but it might fit your wife well. He placed the 3 items on the counter, and Carl saw that the chest plate was actually made of tiny interlocking scales. It created a vest more flexible than chainmail and incredibly light, but solid enough that it would block any sort of attack with decent efficiency. Oh, I think that she might like that. It's well suited to her fighting style. The elder nodded. Yes, I watched her match, and her agility is incredible, far beyond most battle mages. So, when I heard that you were able to do these sorts of upgrades, I immediately thought of this piece. Very considerate. I like customers who keep my needs in mind. Now, what can I do for you? Do you have a preference for your weapons? The elder sighed dramatically. Unfortunately, these are not for me. I have an ancient divine weapon, a demigod-ranked blade. These are for my personal disciples, a pair of paladins. Oh, paladins are perfect. I have quite a few options that are perfect for them. Tell me, are they designated tanks for group outings, thanks to their class? You say that like paladins have a choice. They're the tanks for boss fights, the champion designate for access challenges, and the guardian for clueless newbies that we have an interest in keeping alive. Carl smiled, and the elder winked at him. Folks like you and your Dynamage, or those brats from the academy, their parents get all huffy if they get wounded, like being born here makes the world less dangerous for them. All right, if they're defenders in the broadest sense, I will specialize their weapons for the purpose. I've been informed that most people don't go out fully armored here, so putting defensive skills on the weapons shouldn't be too outlandish. The elder looked curious. What do you usually wear in your mortal world to go traveling? Carl shrugged and activated bestial raiment to equip a set of armor. That is impressive, I will give it that much. An epic-grade immortal rank armor set. Or is that a skill? But the moment that anyone saw you, they'd assume that you were there to cause carnage, and they would team up against you. Have you ever heard of the concept of playing the pig to kill the tiger? Carl shook his head. Not the saying, but I think I get the idea. Make yourself look like prey, then slaughter them when they least expect it. The elder smiled. Not usually that bloodthirsty, but yes. Though they don't restrain their aura, everyone puts on their friendliest expressions and dresses well, but not too well. It makes everyone else guess what their intentions are and just how well equipped they are. Ray liked this man. He understood how the world worked. Carl thought about reminding her that she was not exactly subtle about her appearance. But she did apply the standard to the equipment that she made for everyone else, so Ray did at least understand the concept. She just didn't agree with following it for herself. The two theories of success. Stealth or heavy stealth. Carl joked, relaying Ray's thoughts to the elder. Heavy stealth. If there are no survivors, you are not detected. The elder's laughter made a few of the alchemists look out from their rooms on the upper floors. That sort of loud laughter rarely ended well for whoever it was directed at. But this time it sounded genuinely amused. Carl stared at the pair of swords and began to sketch ideas for the paladins. What do you think about giving the blades something like Blessed Item to buff a Consecrated Ground effect? For paladins, that's the all-in-one super ability. But on a sword, it can be effectively passive when you're in combat. If I just add some bonus damage and life leech to it, that gives them everything that they could possibly ask for, all in one spot. What is Consecrated Ground? I'm not familiar with the effect. Carl took out a copy of the skill book that had been made to bribe clerics and paladins with. It was both Thor and Tessa's favorite spell, after all. Consecrated Ground, epic grade, holy, defensive ability. Reduces damage taken by 30%. Increases all damage done by holy attacks by 30%. Deals constant holy damage to targets in range. Oh, now we're talking. Chapter 1529. Was that a? Carl put the book away and added the spell to the list of effects that the blades would need. It was really not a large list. The spell took care of nearly everything, but it would only work for those with a holy element magic affinity. As he was arranging the runes, the elder turned to leave. Then he turned back to stare at Carl.
Wait.
That was a skill book, an actual, functional skill book for an epic grade paladin skill. Yes. Where did you find that in a mortal world? Oh, that's easy. We taught inscription to a large portion of the Dragon Church. When paladins have the ability to write skill books, eventually you will get most of the super rare skills recorded. Then, the blue dragons can make more copies. The issue is that they're extremely difficult to copy and take forever. But you do have a copy, which means that there is a chance that it could be duplicated by the inscriptionists we have here. The elder contended. Yes, I would say that is possible. I could even loan them the book. It's easy enough to copy it without using it if you know the technique. The elder's eyes went vacant for a moment as he sent a system message. The skill library elder will be over soon. I see that you're on punishment for something, so you must not have been to see him yet. Carl covered his chest and sighed dramatically. It's all a huge misunderstanding, you see. I wasn't informed that the rules on using force in the clan compound were limited to the ones actually fighting, and not everyone who came with them. The elder shrugged. 50 hours well spent to get the chance to beat the stupid out of them. You know, when you look at it that way, it makes so much more sense. The rules seemed silly, as they were clearly there for a fight. But I suppose the elders don't want to encourage it, so they just punish everyone involved in such an incident. The elder grinned. The punishment is also discretionary. Picking a fight and losing will get them time for disrupting the peace. It's all very political, you see. Plus, the elders feel that too many of the members lack humility. You shouldn't have too many more issues. You've made many friends among the elders and excursion leaders already, and that will only grow as more of them get an actual chance to purchase your specialty items. It's always good to make friends. Here, I can't count on just being able to beat everyone who causes me issues. But that reminds me of a question I had. Just how much does power scale as you progress through Ascension? When I make items, I see them listed as Immortal 1/50th, but those before Ascended Immortal status aren't all that much stronger than I am, double at most. That can be difficult to understand at first. The first steps are largely technical, related to your understanding of the immortal realm. They're very close to the common and awakened stages of the mortal realms. Then Ascended runs all the way to the equivalent of Mythic. A peak immortal like Elder Fersham is hundreds of times stronger than someone who has just taken the first step into the Ascended stage, and they're a few times stronger than the average person who hasn't. I have never seen a 1 to 50 rating method before, so it might be related to gear quality. However, if you think of every step as a 50 to 100% increase in power, then each of the 50 steps could be used to lead you to peak immortal. I'm not entirely clear. I'm not a peak immortal, but that should be close. Carl nodded. That makes sense. A lot of things are rated differently by the system when it comes to gear. I've never seen the fractional notation before, so it could be related to the fact that Immortal covers such a huge group of equipment qualities. That's no joke. 2 epic-grade Immortal weapons could have a base damage rating. Wait, I think I know that it really means. The difference between a base Immortal Blade's unmodified damage and the worst Supreme Ranked weapon's base damage is about 50 times. By the time that you get to Supreme Ranked, gear is a bit of a joke. It's such a small addition that most don't even bother with it, unless it adds a percentage of base stats. I will keep that in mind. Percentage bonuses to stats are the way to go. When I'm crafting items, I will try to make them with that instead of the flat stats that I have been aiming for. Is that possible? Because even a 10% boost to my base strength is 200 points. Though I am one of the stronger, so if you can add more than that, then your sales to the clan would be better with flat stats. Carl laughed and set the last ring of titanic strength that he had made on the counter. I think that I underestimated just how much of a boost the strongest immortals would get from good gear. That's a quarter of my base added, and another 10,000 strength from the percentage. By the gods, Titanic is no joke in that name. I really would be on par with a Titan's strength wearing that. Kara wandered in the door with a smile. You only have 2,000 strength? Is that a human thing? Because I nearly have that much and I'm new. You also have innate invulnerability, which humans don't. You can't compare a badger's stats to those of us mere humans. Carl laughed. True. Carl, give me that ring for a minute. I need to do a thing. Does it involve giving the ring to Ameldor and then challenging him to another fight? It does now. Carl tossed her the ring as the elder sighed. You can't just point the badger at random elders when she gets bored. That's not a random elder. He's a wrath demon. Do you think that there is anything he wants more after a long day of teaching students than a good fight with a chaos badger? I should go make sure that the barriers are refreshed on the arena. Chapter 1530. Giant Badger. He wasn't nearly fast enough. The sound of collisions shook the air around the compound only seconds after he left, and Carl mentally checked in on Kara. She had used Greater Beast Form and Behemoth to turn her into a 6-meter-tall badger, now larger in every dimension than her Wrath Demon opponent, who was buffed up by his new ring. The battle was shaping up to be an epic one, as the arena was shaking with the barriers up, and they hadn't even gotten serious yet. Kara had fully buffed herself for this fight. She had even used Haste, Brutality, and Warbeast to fully armor and enhance herself, though the armor was hidden under the hide of her badger form. Even with all that, Ameldor was still stronger than she was now that he had such a huge buff to his stats, and Kara was not going to win by overwhelming force, but they had also agreed not to use weapons or offensive skills. Only their own claws and buffs. "Are you not going to go watch the fight?" one of the clerks asked quietly as Carl began to work on the swords for the paladins. "Nope, you can go though. Call it a paid break, as long as you're back in 15 minutes. I won't tell anyone." The clerk looked longingly at the door, then nodded. "It's not neglecting my duties. Nobody will be here for alchemy herbs until after the fight. If we can hear it from here, then half the clan knows that something is going on." "Precisely. Go, have fun." The last of the staff members who stayed in the front left, and Carl started to draw on the swords with a paint pen. It was better to work when there was nobody around, but after only a few seconds, he saw bunnies poking their heads out from the back room. Today had been slow for actual customers, and they were missing the snacks that Carl had handed out so freely yesterday. No customers, so everyone is on break. "Here, take these and pass them around. They're a failed batch, so I can't vouch for the taste," Carl warned. They even had a failed batch label on them, but as to why they had failed, he couldn't tell. If they were actually toxic, Lotus presumably would not have put them into storage in the tiny world's cupboards. It had been enchanted with a preservation spell by Lotus, using nature magic to keep the food fresh without freezing it. "You know, you're pretty alright," the bunny whispered as she returned to the others. "You don't have to be afraid to talk around me. If there is nobody else here, we're not in public. That's the rule, right? Mortals don't speak in public." The bunny nodded. "Nobody wants to hear what we have to say anyhow, so it works out fine. But you're different. Friendly, but not creepy. Maybe because you have a fox wife." "I agree. Some of these immortals need to get laid more often." The bunny giggled and held up the tray of cupcakes. "Thank you for this. We've made great progress this week, just using the resources that you've provided." "Of course. I will be sure to keep sending them even after my time at the counter is over. Miss Remy will be here all the time, and she can deliver them as well." "The snake is scary." Carl smiled. "She's not going to eat anyone. She's not big enough to, anyhow. But you never know what she will make you drink. She's got a very frightening mad scientist vibe. She hasn't even talked to her yet, and she has Remy pegged." Hawk joked. The Naga couldn't even deny it. The bunnies were perfect test subjects. They weren't allowed to say no. Not that she intended to hurt them. Quite the opposite, really. But nobody trusted her new concoctions, and it was not easy to get people to test them out if they didn't come from one of the established recipes that the elders could vouch for. It was horribly limiting, even if Elder Socrate was glad to help her learn and refine her new techniques. What good was learning new things if nobody was going to use them? Carl finished setting up the runes on the first sword, then made a couple of alterations that would increase the output, while allowing the sword to channel its own energy for the consecrated ground effect. Having that effect active at will, without cost to the user, would be perfect for the paladins. They had enough to worry about on their own, and they didn't need a blade that caused them even more mental stress and mana use. The blade glowed with bright white holy light as Carl finished it, so he quickly put it in storage before it attracted attention. Well, more attention because there were a half-dozen bunnies watching at the door to the back room, enraptured by his skills. Then, he started work on the second one, which went much more smoothly without the need to make alterations. That would turn them into a matched pair, and they were designed to grow with their user, so they would be with the paladins for a very long time, assuming nothing drastic happened to their wielders. Perhaps that was the reason that so much was lost? The immortals regularly fought and killed each other, so whatever was in their inventory would vanish with their final death. They didn't wear most of their valuables, or keep them in a storage item unless their inventory was full. So, every death caused an unknown number of valuable relics to be lost forever. It was a tragedy for the overall power level of the immortal worlds, but in a way it really was a self-regulating system. The immortals weren't sitting on mountains of loot because so much of it vanished with every kill. That kept power scaling from getting out of hand and kept people with eternal lifespans interested in doing the things near home, instead of getting bored after collecting all the good stuff and going out to cause trouble for others. Perhaps the gods knew what they were doing when they designed the system?